We're looking at a major shakeup inside the Trump administration, one that signals a deeper tension inside the government itself. Trump has officially removed Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem from her position, ending a tenure that was controversial almost from the moment it began. And the way that it happened matters because this wasn't just a routine cabinet reshuffle. This was the firing that came after weeks of escalating scrutiny, congressional confrontations, and political embarrassment from the administration. So let's take it back and see what actually happened. Now, the removal was announced publicly by the president on social media, where he confirmed that Noem will no longer serve as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Instead, Trump said she would have been resigned to a newly created diplomatic role called Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americans, basically demoted, right? At the same time, Trump revealed that he intends to replace her with Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullins pending Senate confirmation. So this makes Noem the first cabinet-level official removal that's been removed from Trump's second term administration. So, but the timing of this decision didn't come out of nowhere. To understand why she was fired, let's go ahead and rewind a little bit and see what just happened earlier in Washington. So, Noem appeared before Congress for a tense oversight hearing. Lawmakers from both parties questioned her leadership of the Department of Homeland Security. This was not a friendly hearing whatsoever. So, this is the thing that triggered this crisis, basically, right? Republican and Democrats pressed her about multiple controversies tied to her tenure, including immigration enforcement operations and federal spending decisions. One of the most explosive moments came when lawmakers questioned a $220 million government-funded advertising campaign promoting immigration enforcement policies. Now, the ad prominently featured Noem herself, including footage that's been filmed at the Mount Rushmore encouraging undocumented migrants to self-deport. 220 million American funded money, our tax money. So critics have accused her of using taxpayer funds to basically boost her own political profile, right? But the real problem emerged when she told lawmakers that Trump personally approved the campaign. The statement reported basically angered the White House because it placed the president directly in the center of a spending controversy. Not that there's anything new to the Trump administration or Trump himself, right? So Washington, right, politics, that kind of moment can become career ending, which it did. It was like, you're fired. I'm sure he didn't say it like that, but you know what I mean. You get the message. So members of Congress had already been raising alarms about several issues tied to the Department of Homeland Security under her watch, under this administration. So large federal spending decisions, including reports of hundreds of millions of dollars allocated for department aircraft and operational costs, like internal management controversies, including accusations that top advisors wielded unusual influence over DHS operations, and intense criticism over the immigration enforcement ICE policies that became flashpoints across the country. In fact, some lawmakers had already begun calling for investigations and even impeachment inquiries related to DHS operations earlier this year. The congressional hearing brought those tensions into the open, and once that happened, the political pressure inside Washington escalated very, very quickly, dramatically. So what makes the story particularly striking is that Noem was not a political opponent of Trump, right? Quite the opposite. You can see the reporters that we've been doing. Kristi Noem promoting Trump's policies left, right, center, wholeheartedly. She was a loyal ally, right? As the governor, now the person that's been appointed as the governor of South Dakota, she built a national reputation as a staunch defender of conservative policies and a loyal supporter for the political movement of this administration. So her appointment as Homeland Security in 2025 was widely seen as a reward for that loyalty. And during that tenure, she defended the administration's immigration agenda that included large-scale enforcement operations, expanded deportation programs, and the controversial crackdowns that became central to the Trump second-term immigration strategy. So, in other words, she wasn't just another cabinet member; she was one of the administration's ideological enforcers, which makes her removal all the more significant. Now, why would he fire his own ally? In Washington, loyalty often matters, but political damage matters more. Presidents tend to remove officials when three things happen simultaneously. Number one, public controversies begin to dominate media coverage, which has been happening because of the war with Israel and Iran. I mean, with the war in Iran. And then second, congressional investigations create political risk. They don't want that. And the third, controversy starting touching the president himself. Not that this is anything new to him, by the way, but by the time Noem finished testifying before Congress, all three of those conditions were basically in place. The hearing had generated millions of headlines. She lied, and there was a lot of things that happened. We might dissect that in another life. We might do a live session on that. So lawmakers from both parties were raising questions about DHS operations, and her statements had directly implicated the president in a controversial spending program. That's not the whole point of it, but that's just some of the points, right? The calculations inside the White House became simple: remove the official, contain the damage, and move forward. Now, what's going to happen next of this phase story? It centers around on the person Trump wants to replace her. Now, Senator Markwayne Mullins, he has been nominated to lead the Department of Homeland Security. Mullins is a close ally of Trump and a strong supporter of the administration immigration enforcement strategy again. But unlike Noem, he must still go through the Senate confirmation process before permanently taking over the role. That means Congress will once again have an opportunity to question the direction of DHS policy, right? So, in giving the controversies that led to Noem's firing, those hearings are likely going to be super intense. So, let's take a moment back, and there's a larger story unfolding here. The firing tells us something important about the internal dynamics of this Trump administration. Even the loyal allies, political survivor defenders, are staying aligned with the president messaging and avoiding controversies to create vulnerability. You cannot not KISS this man's ASS. If you can't do that, then you can't say anything negative about him. You can't involve him in your nonsense or whatever, even though he's part of it. You just have to keep your mouth shut, agree to what he says. Is you have to be a yes woman, yes man. Practically what I'm gathering, what everybody has been saying. So, every loyal ally is not loyal if you're going to backbite him, not backbite, if you're going to say anything negative about him or his administration. So the moment you as an official become a liability, a political liability, especially during a congressional scrutiny, the White House moves quickly and fast. Okay, and that's exactly what appears to have happened here. Kristi Noem entered the administration as a trusted ally, but in Washington, alliances can shift very, very quickly. And today, Department of Homeland Security has a new leadership transitioning underway. You know, for someone that has been appearing on TV and just defending the policy and the broader national, security strategy of the Trump administration. So after months of controversy, he said, "No, baby, you can't involve me in anything. If I did not want to be involved, you can't involve me." So you cannot overshadow Trump's narrative. You just cannot. No figure within the Trump orbit can become bigger than him, the president himself, right? So her being replaced her at the center of several politically explosive issues. She was in those, right? Being the front and center, the death connected to the federal immigration actions in Minneapolis, DHS spending controversies, and that national security messaging during the Iran crisis that we're facing right now. Now, supporters of this administration are arguing she wasn't fired. She was promoted to a strategic diplomatic role. No, she was demoted. I believe she was just demoted because she wasn't fitting the narrative that they wanted her to carry her. So the counter is that timing makes it look like a political demotion rather than promotion, especially since the reassignment came immediately after the congressional scrutiny. So And her departure, her demotion basically came when the administration again is dealing with this high stake pressure simultaneously. The escalating military tensions involving Iran, and right now Lebanon, Yemen, and the U.S. allies, you can say, in the Gulf are being attacked by Iran, and so on and so forth. So scrutiny over immigration enforcement operations, just and this growing international attention on the US foreign policy decisions. So removing a controversial cabinet figure can sometimes, you can say, function as a political pressure release valve. So it kind of shifts the headline, but did it really shift the headline? So the real questions we should be asking moving forward is, does this double down on the same policies, or does it shift tone while keeping the strategy? The answer will likely shape the next phase of this Trump administration. Until next time, I leave you all in the care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Fi amanillah.